John Devoy has always had a sense of adventure, a need to explore new horizons. Today, at the age of 62, he lives on a 6-acre organic farm near Rosscarbery in West Cork, along with his wife Sarah and 3 teenage children.
You could go mad and make a chutney or something.
Yeah, you could, yeah.
Whether to leave them or take them down.
Take out the side shoots.
But as a young boy, John had dreams of travelling much further afield. Born in 1957, John grew up in Whitegate, East Cork, close to the oil refinery where his father, Thomas, worked as a mechanic. When John was 9 years old, the international demand for engineers in a booming oil industry led to his father accepting a job in Libya.
A Pandora's box of history, yeah. My father worked in Libya. He was there about 2 years. And I was a young 9-year-old. Lots of postcards came. All of that stuff that came back from Libya not just fed into a wanderlust, it gave me the confidence to do whatever I wanted to do.
In 1985, John decided to quit his job as medical laboratory technician in Cork University Hospital to embark on his own journey of discovery. Looking for advice, he paid a visit to the pioneering travel writer Dervla Murphy, author of Full Tilt, an account of her trip by bicycle from Ireland to India in the 1960s.
We had a long, long conversation about travel, about adventure. I remember leaving, it was late and I was cycling back to Cork, and on the doorstep, as I left, she says, well, it's going to be a great adventure. You go out there and come back with a story to share.
So that's exactly what John did. Over the course of 24 months, he travelled from North Cape in Norway to Cape Town, South Africa. Just himself and a bicycle.
I've heard people describe, and it's common to say, we're going off-grid. I describe my adventure as pre-grid. There was no phones, there was no satellite navigation, there was no GPS, there was nothing.
It's now over 30 years since John completed his epic journey. But he's only recently published the first book of a planned trilogy telling the story. So why the wait?
I had to wait for years and to create some distance between the person who actually did the journey. I say, that was me, that was once upon a time. Now I understand what he did, and I can tell you the story.
It really needs to take its time. And working on a busy farm, day after day, 850 chickens, a few children being nurtured and grown along the way, it was a very, very busy space. Writing a book on top of all that, it was very, very challenging.
John finally got the push he needed when he was asked to prepare a talk about his travels to the Rosscarbery Historical Society.
Being approached by the Rosscarbery Historical Society really gave me it lit the fuse to writing the book. The more I read the letters, the more I read the diaries, the more I realised I'm ready now. Yeah, the back from Giora Biran, Haifa, Israel.
The talk was in 2012. It was 2016 when I found him starting the book. I called to his house one day to buy some groceries from the farm, and I found him hunched over the computer.
John's first book recounts a section of his journey between Cairo and Nairobi. It's called Quandam, Travels in a Once World.
Quandam means a period of time that has passed. To do that journey would be impossible today. And I recall describing in the book the journey across the Bayouda Desert, 300 kilometres, not very far from here to Dublin. But back then, there was no road. It took me nearly 12 and a half days. You're literally dragging the bike through sand. So the physical journey is completely different. And these are the shorts I wore. These were bought in Amsterdam, in Holland, and they were proper cycling shorts. But by the time I got to Egypt, they began to fray. I had no choice but put patches in. And in Bunia, which is in the Ituri rainforest in the Congo, it was either get rid of it or do a big job. And the tailor in Bunia did this magnificent patch. So they each have memories.
Alone, John faced many challenges, including a hit and run in Egypt that damaged his bike and a bout of cerebral malaria in the Congo. But the hardest part of his journey came on his arrival in Nairobi, when John received a telegram from home. His father had died and been buried, and John hadn't known.
To hear about that at a point, in a potentially high point of John's journey, I can only imagine how crushing that would have been.
So I seriously asked myself, should I return home? The embassy staff gave me all the time to communicate with my family. And I remember my youngest brother saying, and come home for what? To stand by your dad's grave? And he said, and then what?
He acknowledges it himself that these are the things that are part of the risks of taking these trips. And there is nothing you can do about it. You have to accept that. And I think that's the way he took it too.
The support from family and friends was take the news, but continue.
After finally completing his travels, it was the return to Cork and his life as a medical laboratory technician that John was perhaps least prepared for.
Coming back is the hardest because you've exposed yourself to so much experience, to so much life. It is like taking 10 years of life, normal life, and squeezing it down into 2. It's very hard to slot back into a 9 to 5.
To say it's a culture shock is an understatement, and to fit back in with work colleagues who perhaps had a whole different perspective on their life, whole different set of values, that's extremely challenging.
In 1990, John met Sarah while she was studying for a master's degree. 4 years later, they got married and started a family. But he became increasingly restless in his old job. His travels had given him a different mindset. John had a desire to work outdoors, to engage with nature, and to do something that contributed to a community. So, in 1999, he resigned from his job, sold his house, and decided to take on the new challenge of starting an organic farm. John and Sarah put everything they had into their new adventure. A massive risk for a couple with a young family.
It was a huge challenge because my wife has no farming background, so we were going into this organic farming decision. If I use the word green, we were really green.
It was absolutely extraordinary, the challenges we faced. This was a greenfield site. We had to put in our water, our electricity. We often compared ourselves with the Flintstones. We were down there digging holes, trying to plant 500 apple trees, thinking we were doing amazing, and then they didn't work.
It was a big challenge to set up that farm. John really had to start and learn everything from scratch, but that's in the nature of the chap. He is a very adventurous person, and he applies himself with terrific force to these things.
Despite many setbacks, John and Sarah were determined to pursue an environmentally friendly approach to farming and the planet. Eventually, their perseverance paid off. The farm began to thrive, and their organic produce became a fixture in local markets, shops, and restaurants.
The reason it is here, I believe, was because I more or less took the energy of the journey and I used that energy, that relentless determination, to create it. I said, right, if I can travel and cycle to South Africa, I can start a farm.
With his children now almost grown up, John has decided to lease the farm in order to devote more time to his writing.
Life moves on. I'm 62. I've written one book. The biggest job at hand at the moment is the writing of the sequel.
I feel the process of writing for John is an absolute extraordinary journey. It's such an affirming, incredible thing to do.
And after taking so long for John's first book, when can we expect his second?
My apologies to all of those who had to wait 30 years for the first book, but I promise it will not be 30 years. It will be far, far less than that.